Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all of you as well. It's a great privilege for me to be moderating this session because I do believe that cybersecurity is a topic of paramount importance and significance in an era where the world is really being rapidly disrupted by new technologies. The internet, and now of course the Internet of Things as well, in some sense has really dramatically altered the way we live, think, socialize, interact, work with one another. And there is, of course, a flip side to our presence on the internet, and that is really the risks that this presence in cyberspace exposes us to. So joining me to really help understand the different facets of cybersecurity, cybercrime, and how we can mitigate these risks and live in a more secure environment is a very, very distinguished panel that would be joining us. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking out your invaluable time and joining us here for this very, very interesting session that we're having, as we kickstart, the Cybersecurity Awareness Week. And I want to start off with you, Dr. Balsing, because, you represent a very, very important, part of the police force. And I want to get a sense of, how much of a risk all of these new disruptive technologies have begun posing to citizens, and what the IT wing of the state police department is really doing in order to, counter some of the breaches in the cyber world. If you can, illustrate with some statistics on how things are panning out.
First of all, I will express my apologies to HDFC ERGO. I came late. Directly coming to your question, now take a bird's eye view how the risk is and the risk landscape is developing. I will pick only two cases, so you will try to understand the quantum of risk, and the intensity and the reach of the risk. One is Cosmos Bank case. In 3 hours span, on holiday, bank lost 94 crore rupees. Another in Mumbai, on holiday, the State Bank of Mauritius, Mumbai branch, lost 149 crore rupees in a span of 1 hour. So this is the quantum of loss, the intensity, the reach, you can understand. Another is that you see the NCRB data for last 15 years. I studied in my PhD this last 15 years of data. We found that there are two categories of crime. One is purely technical cyber crime, and another is cyber economic crime. So where the financial or economic aspect is involved. Every year, there is a growth of 100%.
In the crime?
In crime. So continuously for last 15 years, the cyber crime has grown continuously by 100% or more so. So right. that is the growth. So now we saw the growth pattern, we saw the peculiar cases. Now we'll go which kind of threat factors are there. Earlier there was a simple website defacing or maybe hacking, that kind of things were happening. But now phishing was also there. Now take the understanding how the phishing industry, that has become an industry. You take a Jamtara model, people have call centers. In Mumbai, in Noida, people have call centers for phishing to cheat people with a staff of 100 and 150. So this phishing, a simple phishing case, which is, since for last 10 to 15 years, 10 years, because 2008 it started, because most of the banks got digitized 2005-06, and then phishing started. So this industry has developed into an industry, this crime. Take example of the insurance sector. In insurance sectors also, there are call centers calling people that your policy has matured and give the details, and they are withdrawing the policies without their consent, or forcing some of the clients to take the policies which they don't want. So this has turned into an industry. This crime has turned into an industry, is one aspect. Another is that earlier it was only some kind of deception, and a basic kid, we can say script kiddies were playing. But now there are organized crime syndicate, and they are using the advanced tools. Like take an example of ransomware. You will say ransomware only is in far western and most developed countries. Take example of Mumbai. The JNPT is India's foremost and the most important seaport. It carries near about 30 to 40% of sea traffic of India. Had 2 terminals. Out of that, 1 terminal was down for 3 months due to ransomware. One of the largest shipping company, Maersk, got encrypted. Then take example again of MGR hospital. So every sector, it got encrypted due to ransomware. So threat vector from simple phishing and defacing has gone to ransomware.
Right.
Now move towards from ransomware, go to Cosmos. It is international crime syndicate who has committed it.
Right. So the nature of the crime you're saying has become more sophisticated over the years. But so can you quickly tell us, how the state police department is countering, the bad guys, so to speak?
So there are different measures. There are technical measures, one aspect, legal measures, procedural measures, and procedural means regulations, and then the human resource development and capacity building. I will start from human resource and capacity building. So we have cyber labs. In particularly, I'm talking about Maharashtra. We have cyber labs in each district, and with all kind of forensic software, hardwares provided them. Then we have started a capacity building program for police officers, policemen, and an awareness program to aware the citizens, how they can prevent the crime. Is one aspect. Second, on procedural and regulatory measures, the DOPT Data Protection Bill is coming. We have IT Act. Then there is amendment in IT Act 2008 that is going on. Then the MeitY has issued many circulars, even for matrimonial frauds and phishing. There are circulars and regulations. Then come to technology. We are building a cyber security project which will secure the assets of the state government. We call them Maharashtra Cyber Security Project, in which we are envisaging CERT, we are envisaging predictive policing unit, then we are envisaging a crime analytics center and center for excellence for capacity building. So this is the thing.
All right, so it's an all-encompassing way to tackle it. But Saket, as an ethical hacker, you have a real sort of firm grasp on some of the emergent trends in cybercrime. So would you say that given that we've recognized the importance of this, we're becoming more secure as a nation, more cyber secure, or do you think the bad guys are still one step ahead of us, no matter what we do?
Okay, so short answer to this, and not to scare everybody, but remember, I'm in the business of security. So are bad guys one step ahead of us? I would say they are multiple steps ahead of us. I can give the example, though, very, very rightly pointed out by Sir out here. He mentioned about, let's take Cosmos Bank as an example. Very rarely do people understand the scale and the intensity of a hack which happened out there. He spoke about how in 3 hours such a large amount was siphoned. I'll take exactly 2 minutes to walk you through exactly what happened. You actually had a situation where, if you understand how banking and ATMs work, there's an ATM which is always connected to a switch, which is connected to the core banking system within a bank. That's how any ATM works, right? Now, between the ATM and the switch and the core banking solution, the first part of the hack on a Saturday morning, which was 11th August 2018, the disconnection between switches and the core banking system happened. The hackers took over and they disconnected the kind of interconnectivity between the switch and the core banking system. Then, for over 1 year, they actually had multiple debit cards of Cosmos Bank, which is a 110-year-old cooperative bank in India, which was running a Finacle core banking system, which is used by most of the large banks. You actually had that point where those debit cards were skimmed through petrol pumps or POS systems that you would be swiping your debit cards from. Those numbers were given to people across the world, and you had 28 countries where 80 crore rupees was withdrawn in a matter of 2 to 3 hours. Imagine the sophistication of coordination, where you had 80 crore rupees withdrawn in cash using debit cards within 3 hours. It doesn't stop here. You can always ask the question, Saket, but I mean, for a cooperative bank, would it not be that the limits of each debit card would be very, very small and they would not be able to withdraw it? They actually, hackers took over the switch where they put the limits to the top, which was potentially possible at the switch. So they were at the switch and they did that. They were using the debit cards or, trying to get the debit card for months, if not years. And after knowing that this would happen, they actually went forward and they took out 80 crore rupees. The good news here is, or probably the only good news is, when they were using the debit card, and imagine how sophisticated the hack was, when they used the debit card, suppose you were the person whose debit card, or I was the person whose debit card they were using, when they would use the debit card, there is a ledger at the switch level which gets consolidated on a daily basis. So when you use the debit card, the person's personal account did not get debited, while the money actually came out of the ATM. And mind you, this is not an Anurag Kashyap movie. This is what happened on 11th of August, exactly 2 to 3 months from today, across 28 countries with 15,000 transactions. And that was 80 crore rupees. Now here's the last part. The funny thing is, this was not the only hack that Cosmos saw. I think there was really bad times for them. This was the first hack they saw, which was on a Saturday. And the second hack they saw was on a Monday morning. So when they came up and the system shot up in the morning on Monday, the SWIFT system using which you can do international transactions, that was hacked. And there was 14 crore rupees, that's almost $2 million, which was transferred from Cosmos bank accounts to a Hong Kong-based bank account, which was almost untraceable. It was opened 4 months back before the thing happened, and it was registered by a CA firm which had no traceability, the website was not working, etc., and the money was just siphoned out. So if you put 80 plus 14 crore rupees, that was the 94 crore rupees of this thing. And the last part, by the way, these were 2 back-to-back hacks within 3 days, hitting the balance sheet of Cosmos Bank. The funny part in the entire story was, what were the kind of places where this was alerted? So when this happened on 11th August, all the banks in India got a notice from FBI exactly 3 days before 11th, which was on 8th of August, saying, we are sensing in the underground, that is the deep web, that there is some chatter going on of hacking into some bank in India and doing a mass withdrawal across the globe. We don't know which bank that is, but we know that there's some chatter going on and the hack will happen in the next few days. So please take care of it. This was already sent to all the banks in the country. And guess what? The most scary thing, when this kind of transactions were happening on Saturday, which was 11th of August, it was not the systems of Cosmos Bank that alerted them. It was Visa that alerted them that, look, this is the scale of sudden spike in transaction that we are seeing, and I think there is a problem that you need to look into. And it was contained to 80 crore rupees only. So this is like a live case study of a live bank in India. And this is how secured we are.
No, in fact, both you and Dr. Rajput have really explained in detail the modus operandi of, these syndicates. But I want to get a sense of, from a consumer lens, before I actually go to Anurag, how does one, in these times, safeguard and protect their own data? How does one actually, have a safe cyber presence? Not just in terms of on social media, but also in terms of your financial transactions and so on. Just give us a few quick tips.
Sure. So I don't know if you guys followed what happened to Facebook just 2 weeks back, where 14 million accounts were accessed because of vulnerability in Facebook. And a lot of people came to me and say, hey, what do we do to protect ourselves from that hack? The answer is you can do nothing. When there's a vulnerability that exists at the back-end code of Facebook, through which hackers can access your profile, there is nothing you can do. All you can do is pray, probably. But coming back, why I said that was, the good news is 99% of the attacks that happen do not happen at the code level of a payment system, or do not happen at the code level of a social media website. 99% of the attack happens at the user level, where you will be duped, as sir very rightly pointed out. Now it's almost become a profession where there are full-time employed people with call centers only with the single job of calling and duping people, or first-time credit card or debit card holders or smartphone holders, of what to do and what not to do. So quick point, coming to your question of the tips that I would give, there can be a long technical list of tips that I can provide. Obviously the obvious ones, don't use your, don't share your PIN, don't share your passwords with everybody, have two-factor authentication, upload your operating system antivirus. But those are like, we all know that and we've heard that. The more important one, which I think that needs to be a tip, is not really the technical one, but a psychological one. Because I think because we are not really smart enough to use the smartphone, because we've never got the training of how the smartphone really operates and how do you responsibly use it. Remember, each one of you, how many of you use the smartphone? Can I see hands? Everybody. How many of you you think you're smart enough to use your smartphone? Can I see hands? Almost nobody. How many of you have been trained how to use a smartphone? Can I see hands? And look, this is the problem. Nobody in the entire room knows or have been trained in the right way. It's just been your peers. And that's the problem. So that's the reason I say the psychological solution is when you put something on the internet, through your smartphone, through your laptop, do not assume because you've paid 35,000 rupees for a cell phone, it cannot be hacked. Because it's Facebook, which is a $600 billion company, it cannot be hacked. If you put everything on the internet, be it a direct email to a colleague or a snap you're sending to a friend of yours on Snapchat, if you assume this is already hacked or will be hacked sometime in the future, I think it's a shift in the way you use the internet. And if you do that, you would not post something in the first place, even privately to somebody, that tomorrow can be embarrassing for you. And I think that's the ultimate solution you can have. Because me being a hacker, I can always give you ways to bypass every technical solution I will give you. And really, it's a cat and mouse game that can keep going on. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, absolutely. And I think, Anurag, given the vulnerabilities that he's spelt out, which clearly are quite scary if you look at it, I think, it underlines the absolute importance to insure yourself against, these sort of crimes. So I want to get a sense from, I want to get a sense from you, and what sort of research actually led you to crafting this cyber insurance product.
Actually, the point at which you're asking this question to me, I really don't feel very comfortable because it's kind of created a scare, and for an insurance company to go and capitalize on when a scare has been created, it's not a very good one. But yes, jokes apart. So all the panelists that you see on the dais today, you have everybody that you can think of when you think of cybercrime. You have a legal expert who will help you in defending yourself or initiating an action. You have a psychologist who will take care of the post-crime trauma or the stress that you undergo. You have a police officer who will kind of help you apprehend the cyber criminals. And you have Saket, who tells you what to do and what not to do so that you don't become something that was missing is all these things cost you money. And the money that you lost in the aftermath of a cyber crime. There's no protection against that. So a legal expert will, legal defense will cost you money. Consultation with a psychologist will cost you money. Saket's advice will cost you money. Where does this money come from? And that's where we step in. So we have come up with a, an insurance solution whereby you can protect yourself from the financial difficulties that you face in the aftermath of a crime. So this is an insurance policy that becomes very, very important in view of what you have heard from Saket just now. Just to, scare you a little more. I was just reading some of the numbers, and numbers I really love. There are nearly 80 billion malicious attempts worldwide every day. 80 billion. And I just did a quick, and this study has been published by, McAfee and CSIS. And I just did some quick calculations. Looking at the share of the internet users that you have in India, this number could be somewhere between 6 billion to 9 billion malicious attempts. Now, how many of those attempts become successful is something that we do not know about. 6 billion to 9 billion attempts per day on Indian internet users. And if you look at it in minutes, it translates to 6.25 million attempts every minute. 62 lakh malicious attempts. That's really scary. Now, Dr. Rajput talked about the crimes. Now, these resulted in nearly 50,000 cyber crimes being reported to police in 2016. That's about every crime 10 minutes. That's a very, very small number as compared to the crime that must actually be happening that people don't report. That's more scary. Now, people do suffer losses. People do spend money on legal defense, on psychologists, but they don't have anywhere to go to meet these expenses, and that's where the insurance product comes in.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to ask you to briefly lay out some of the features of this product, because one of them, which I found was very interesting, was actually covering the cost of consulting a psychologist, and we'll come to Varkha in just a bit. But, who actually buys this insurance, who's it meant for, and what are some of the, key things that it covers?
Basically, we have designed, so we have had a cyber cover for corporates for a long time, and they've been buying. But this is a cover for each one of us. Each one of us illiterate smartphone users who do not know how to, use these smartphones, and the kind of exposure that we have. So anybody who is above 18 years of age, who can actually contract an insurance policy, he can buy this. One can buy it for himself. One can buy it for the entire family. And when I say entire family, we promote 2+2. So the hum do hamare do. So the spouse and 2 children. And this protects against, the most kind of expenses that you will incur in this. The most important is the money lost because of the unauthorized transaction that can happen on your credit card. The money lost because of the unauthorized transaction on your account, on your credit card without your permission. We cover the losses because of that money lost up to the limits chosen by each policyholder. Then we cover the cost of legal defense. If you become, a subject of cyber attack on you, or the cost of initiating a legal action against the offender. It covers the cost of the e-reputation. So somebody goes and writes on your social media profile some offending things, and you feel offended, you feel your reputation has been lost. Then the cost of course, the defending it, the cost of hiring an IT expert. If it causes you trauma, you feel depressed, the cost of consulting a psychologist, it pays you all those costs. Right. You would have heard about so many cases of cyber trolling and bullying, extortion threats on your social media. It covers all those costs that you need to incur to protect yourself from those bullying or trolling or to initiate legal action against offenders.
Right, that's the perfect sort of cue to get in, Varkha, because I want to get a sense of the kinds of cases that you're having to actually deal with when it comes to damage to reputations, bullying, so on and so forth. And has there been an exponential rise in the number of patients you're seeing who come to you as a result of some sort of cyber-related problem?
Sure. I think one of the things that possibly we haven't underscored enough is we are only talking about technical cybersecurity lapses. But what I have also found is in our bedrooms, relationships are becoming more insecure because people are constantly on their gadgets, chatting with other people when they should actually be chatting with their partners. Interpersonal interactions between families have dissipated to an unfortunate all-time low. So of course, on one hand, we are having losses in terms of finance, but I think on the other hand, we are also having tremendous emotional losses where divorce rates are on the increase because of cyber use. And I'm not so sure if this product would also be facilitating those kind of costs where today couples are falling apart because we are having emotional affairs. We are having emotional affairs all the time, chatting with colleagues, chatting with other people, all the time, and that to me is an equally important facet to cybersecurity. And of course, as you just mentioned, if there is an actual loss in terms of financial loss, then you have post-traumatic stress disorder, which usually in the past and by lay people has been only understood as trauma caused due to veterans in war. But today, trauma is also caused by loss, financial loss, business loss, loss of jobs, interpersonal loss, where I think we are on the brink of an interpersonal collapse in our society because of cyber use. And I think it's very important as reporters for you to go back and narrate this facet also. So you've got teenagers, like I have a client right now who I'm handling from a very reputed school in North Bombay, whose Facebook account was hacked on the basis of her. She was, somebody was putting messages as her, as an alias as her, sending out nasty, mean, abusive messages to friends where actually the parents took the initiative to lodge a cybercrime and possibly have an FIR against what they believe were 2 or 3 groups of girls who had ganged up to really bully and harass the girl. Okay, and they hacked into her Facebook account and they started posting on her behalf. And it really traumatized her so much that she was brought to me. So yes, it's not something which is unfortunately going to ebb. If anything, it's only going to increase, and it has a multifaceted impact. It has impacts on our personal life in terms of interpersonal relations. It has impact on our financial lives, as Dr. Rajput and Saket mentioned about the phishing and about the Cosmos Bank loss, etc. So it's something that we, I think, need to sit up and take notice. And I think we need to empower ourselves to learn correct methods to use a smartphone. And as he rightly said, psychologically equip ourselves that are we going to lose our relationships because 2 of us are so happy, busy, sleeping on the same bed, but busy with our phones instead of interacting with each other.
So, you mentioned teenagers and the sort of trauma and harassment that they have to deal with as a result of having a cyber presence. I want you to give me a sense of what you would tell parents or even the teenagers themselves in terms of how they secure themselves from this big bad world out there on the internet.
So I think the fear of missing out and all of us wanting to showcase how wonderful we are, how pretty we look, what lovely places we visit. I think we need emotional stamina building in the children, but I think before the children, it starts with the parents. If a parent is constantly online and taking selfies all the time and showing off where he or she has been, which lovely exotic locations, holidays, etc., it's not unimaginable to expect that the child would also want to follow suit. I mean, if you've seen most Facebook posts and Snapchats, etc., you're actually now even taking pictures of what you're eating. I mean, I think we need an emotional awareness that today you need to be content internally with who you are. And once you are at ease with yourself, you don't constantly need to be comparing yourself to others, or rather you will not compare yourself to others. as a result of which you will not want to use social media all the time to showcase which wonderful locations or what wonderful clothes you have bought and how you look. So we've got a new illness called self-etitis. It has been included in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders only recently. And unfortunately, personality disorders like narcissism have been actually correlated to self-etitis, which is linked. I mean, the more I want to constantly think about I, me, myself, the more I will use social media to put it out. So for parents, I think it's important to set rules, to start as role models themselves, where they're constantly not stuck on their phone, to not allow internet use, especially when the kids go into their rooms, to not give 24/7 access to the internet, taking away phones, keeping it away when the child goes to bed, and then handing it back to him. A lot of schools in Bombay are doing that, where the person first keeps his phone in the school office before he enters class. So I think boundary setting, I think some amount of discipline, some amount of control. I know the children of today are very rebellious and don't want any control, but I think discipline is a great way, and putting time limits to usage and allowing the kids to go out and explore other avenues of what life has to offer, rather than just sitting in front of their screens or under their phones.
Right. I think all very, very important points and insights. But Suhas, I just want to get you in. So we've spoken about the financial aspects. We've spoken about the emotional and the reputational aspects of, all of this. So, but, how equipped are our laws currently to deal with cyber criminals? And, how effective is the quick redressal process? Because, that's something that you don't see in the real world when it comes to our legal processes.
Yeah, I think let's understand from a legal perspective. You see, what is this cyberspace? When it started off, it's completely deregulated space. So the first premise when we look at the laws or legislations for that matter, we have to realize that it's a completely deregulated space. What you see on the surface today as a World Wide Web or internet or cyberspace is merely a tip of the iceberg. Below that is a deep web, underneath that is a dark web. So actually when you look at how do you legislate this in the first place, which is the first contradiction is completely deregulated space. You're trying to regulate transactions, you're trying to regulate behaviors, you're trying to regulate the entire space. And the challenge therefore is that in a completely deregulated space, you're trying to apply laws, you're trying to apply legislations. The second contradiction appears is laws predominantly are local jurisdictional laws. How do you deal with something like what the Cosmos Bank incidence is? Because you're talking about 23 jurisdictions to counter. Now, nobody owns internet per se, although the domain names registry claim to own it, but that's a different issue altogether. But I mean, you look at where would the legislations of the respective countries would they get aligned to in terms of having a uniform treatment to be given to the criminals. So therefore, that second contradiction is while you have local jurisdictional laws, the entire World Wide Web is across the borders. It's a seamless stuff. When it comes to India per se, I think you have predominantly Indian Penal Code and thereafter Information Technology Act. There could be other kind of enactments and legislations that would hold the fort with respect to, let's say the banking sector would have its own RBI driving some of those regulations through a regulatory mechanism or oversight. You will have you will have those regulators trying to have an overlay. When it comes to insurance, I think IRDA would have its own regulations. And that kind of creates further complexities. But basic fundamental is that cybercrime will be dealt with by IPC. And IPC, as we speak, is, I don't know what Dr. Rajput would want to say, but it's in a quandary today. In as much as, Indian Penal Code, which has been holding fort, and it's a very substantive law,
that governs the crimes is inadequate to tackle what's happening. And therefore, I would beg to differ with Saket. I don't think the criminals are one step ahead. When it comes to legislations, I think legislations are 10 steps behind what's happening currently in the space.
So I'm going to come to Mr. Rajput about the point on IPC, but just before that, one quick question. You know, we are actually awaiting in India data protection and privacy laws. I think there's also some talk about, the RBI wanting to do data localization and so on. Are all of these things actually going to help, or a lot more needs to be done to actually plug the loopholes that you've just mentioned?
See, insofar as localization is concerned, I don't think there should be any problem of data localization, because otherwise I think the enforcement agencies would never be able to get to the bottom of the crime. Therefore, data localization and those kind of initiatives or those kind of regulations would be driven. When it comes to the data privacy regulations, I think whether one likes it or not, again there is a contradiction in as much as you're saying data privacy is dead at one end. At the other end, you have GDPR, which, EU was always at the forefront in terms of data regulations. So GDPR is holding the fort across the borders. You will now have Californian consumer law that would come into the force, which is slightly different, and there is a conflict between GDPR and the consumer law from California. We have our own regulations in the draft form currently, in as much as I think they're before the House, they're before the Parliament and Rajya Sabha. And in some form or manner, I think data privacy will come to the fore. But when we talk about the data privacy, I think the fundamental right recognized by the Supreme Court of India notwithstanding, the fact will still remain that if you want to protect your data and you want to keep it private, the onus is on you as an individual data subject. Although the companies who are using the data, or let's say corporates or anybody who is using the data, needs to comply with the regulations. But the first onus is on you.
So the Supreme Court's verdict on privacy being a fundamental right is at least in the right direction, you would say.
No, I think there is no right or wrong direction. Okay, we have to live with the fact that on one hand, privacy is dead insofar as you are on the cyberspace. On the other hand, it is up to you how you're going to control your own privacy. Therefore, like any other fundamental right, you have right to life, you have right to liberty, you have right to trade and profession. Like any other fundamental right, it depends on you, and it depends on an individual, how you exercise the right, how you protect the right, and therefore how you will enforce your own right.
If you're a victim of cybercrime, do you actually approach, the police? Is it pretty much the same methodology of filing an FIR? And, how quickly are these issues actually addressed?
Two questions. No, one is whether IPC and IT Act are adequate or not. So first of all, we have to understand there are only three losses: property, life, and reputation. Okay, and all these are adequately covered in IPC. Now, what has changed is the circumstances in which this are losing. How the property is losing in virtual environment, how the reputation is losing, and still so far no life has been lost, but in cyber physical systems it will be. IPC, there is need to tweak some of the sections that we are also demanding the government. IT Act initially, when it started in 2000, it had very few enforcement sections. In 2008, most of the moduses of crime has been included. Still, we need some of the new moduses to be incorporated in the law. He's right on that point that we need some amendments in law. That is, I am also in concurrence with him. Second part is now how to deal with police and law enforcement agencies when you are, or suppose X person is a victim of the crime. We have developed three sources. First of all, we must appreciate that government is very much positive and helpful, cooperative in this aspect. To give access to justice to the victim, Government of India and Government of Maharashtra, all over India, they have launched a cybercrime.gov.in portal. On that, the crimes related to women, children, pornography, then these pedophiles can be lodged online. So you don't have to go elsewhere, or you can also lodge complaints. Suppose you are a member of a group where the pedophiles or maybe pornographic content or maybe a MMS clip of someone is being circulated, and you don't want to tell that, okay, I am actually informing the police. You have that facility also is there. So you can log into and report in that way. So it's even bullying. So what he mentioned, bullying and abusing to a girl or maybe a woman or a children, you can register it. Now the second part is most of the other offenses, cheating, then the phishing and other offenses. Till so far that facility is not there because we have to mature the system. Second, in Maharashtra, we have provided special cyber police stations. You can directly walk into that cyber police station and register your cyber case complaint. And there are general police stations where anyway you can go and register any type of crime. So it's not cyber or something. But there are very few cases who are purely cyber or technical. There is always a section of IPC or other special acts has to be applied in that case. So this is the three-way method has been evolved to register crime at police.
Right. Saket, I just want to get a sense from you on, another very important consumer-related aspect, because your startup, I think, has Fortune 500 companies as its clients. You're also the chief security provider for Bheem, which is the app that actually runs on the UPI architecture. So give me a sense of, given the emergence of a lot of these fintech players and, this whole revolution that we're seeing with payments and so on, has that changed the security environment for the BFSI space? On one hand, of course, it's become very easy for us to transact. On the other hand, what are some of the protocols that, consumers must keep in mind to keep themselves secure when they use these apps?
Got it. So let me give a very interesting, analogy, and it's very contrary to what most people believe. So I'm sure all of you have used net banking, or you made a payment through your debit card or a credit card, right? And we generally know how painful that is. Painful means you have to take out your credit card, give the CVV first. Or a lot of times the credit card number, OTP will come. Sometimes it will not come. And you will take the number from the SMS, go back, and this is for the urban, tech-savvy, young person here, and he finds it cumbersome or she finds it cumbersome. Imagine what the rest of the country has to go through. And I always like taking this again as a survey. I'm sorry, it just makes it more interactive. How many of you guys have made payment through Bheem? Can I see hands? Bheem, just 2, 3, 4, 5 people? Okay, very small. How many of you have made payments through WhatsApp? Nobody? Wow. It takes exactly 5 seconds to set up. And I can send you the invite. Anybody who's making payments on WhatsApp can easily send you an invite. So you can take it from me, or it's like a 5-second setup. Click there, it automatically detects your bank account. Click on the bank account and you're set up. That's it. It's an SMS that goes and you're set up. The reason I gave this example is you actually had multi-layered security traditionally, where you had to go ahead and give a second factor authentication. The first factor was very cumbersome to remember. Remember, even your net banking passwords, you have to change every 60 days, uppercase, lowercase, special character, all of those stuffs. It's very complex to remember. Bheem, on the other side, and I'll go to the extent of sounding, too boasty about it, but the fact of the matter is, because we globally do security for some of the biggest payment providers in the world, I can tell you proudly that everywhere there is either 1-factor or 2-factor security, right? Second factor in general is the OTP that comes to you or the PIN that you enter. Bheem is 3-factor security, which is 3-factor authentication, without even you giving your password. I don't know if you, that's the reason I was asking. You must try Bheem. You know how beautiful that app is? Just go in Bheem. The first factor is that it
Plugging
does.
your client.
Sorry?
I said you're plugging your client.
I'm plugging my client. The funny thing is, you know, I mean, it's not that I earn any money through that. But as an Indian, if you've not tried something that the government has made, which is a revolution ahead of its time by at least a decade from where the North American or the Western European counterpart is. So I'm not plugging my client, I'm plugging my country where it should have been there in the first place.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to give you that idea that it's such a wonderful thing, and unfortunately most people don't know about it. So if you download Bheem, just go to Bheem. It simply does something called device binding. So it binds your device and sends the device ID to the server. That's first factor. Second factor, it sends an SMS to the server automatically. You don't have to do anything or take an OTP and put something. It automatically sends it. It just asks you, are you okay to send the SMS? You click on OK. And the third factor is you choose the bank. So you say, I blank from HDFC. The app will automatically go and check with HDFC that if this phone number is linked to any bank account, and if it is, it will allow you to log in into the account. Saket, this is so scary. If somebody steals my phone or clones my SIM card, he can rob me of the entire thing. These were three factors, and guess what? There is a fourth factor, which is the UPI PIN that the person has to enter. And that PIN that he has to enter is the next factor of authentication, which you generally create for the first time. It's just a 4-digit PIN, like your ATM PIN that you need to enter, and only using that you can transact. You'll be very happy and proud to know as Indians that the amount of frauds that happen in the United States versus India in terms of absolute value is less than 1/8
Okay.
than what happens in a developed country. So I'm saying that we are in a very, very good position thanks to the regulations brought in by Reserve Bank of India 6 years back, 7 years back, around two-factor authentication. So things are not to be like super scared of, and I would highly motivate everybody to make online payments. And if you're making a payment at a place you're not sure of, go to something called Net Safe Banking, get a virtual credit card number, which is a one-time credit card number which you can cap the amount with, and use that rather than using your actual credit or debit card number. So sorry for the long answer, but it's just that I wanted everybody to know about something which unfortunately a lot of people don't know.
No, but it's great to know that, you know, speed is not coming at the cost of security.
Exactly, and that's why I said it's
yeah.
ironical, because most people
Yeah.
think it cannot be, if it becomes more secured, it will be more tough to use.
Yeah.
While
Yeah.
Bheem would be more easy to use while being more secure.
Right. You know, because we're running out of time, I want to give Anurag the last word. You know, I want you to, you know, tell me how you're planning to educate your customers or generally people about the importance of this. And, you know, I ask you this because you have the Cybersecurity Awareness Week coming up. You know, what do you hope to achieve from that?
So the idea is to, you know, go on the social media where people are you know, the most exposed people are there and create awareness about what are the do's and don'ts about using your phones and when you are on the World Wide Web, what to do and what not to do, to know about the risks that you face, and while you try to protect yourself from you know, the experts that guide you in how to protect, also you know, buy insurance and protect yourself from financially, and be an aware smartphone user rather than a dumb smartphone user, as Saket put it, and buy insurance, which comes really, and you know, the best part is that while the exposures are so much, the risk involved is so high, the insurance that we have created is really very cheap.
Yeah.
And so please invest a little bit in this while you invest in your knowledge and you invest in more careful operation of your smartphone and the internet.
All right, so, you know, we're going to take questions from the press, but before that, can I just please invite Dr. Balsing to unveil the cyber manual, that actually that HDFC ERGO has come up with. So if you could get that up on the stage. A big round of applause for our panelists, and it's now open for about 10 minutes for all your questions. We can just pass the mic around for anybody who might have questions.
Just a very small and quick question. Is there any fine print while we are giving out policies from HDFC, ERGO or any other company, that you have to have an antivirus and you have to have it updated, or any other thing that it is your fault, it should not happen, something like that? So any fine print is there, and if there is any antivirus you would recommend? That's my second question.
No, there's no fine print like that. We are not recommending any particular thing. We are saying that you need to be protected and you need to use as much precaution as you can have. What we are saying is that we will have some kind of a assessment of your security, and so that your premium will be dependent upon how secure you are, the way you use internet, the way you use a smartphone. So your premium will depend upon some of those features, but there are no fine prints.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Zohaib from Media Outlook. So while talking about cybercrime, you people just mentioned about these call centers turning out to be the crime centers. So sometimes what happened, the people running these call centers, they are so strong enough, they have such a strong political background that even media is quite unwilling to report about these crimes, and even police department is quite slower to just take actions. So what sort of, and even the Indian law has such loopholes that these people, they just flee away.
So I'm not in concurrence with your thought process. First of all, let me clear that take example of all the call centers where the raid has happened. Maybe in Noida, maybe in Jamtara, maybe in this Thane or Bangalore or Hyderabad, wherever. So these call centers are running on the pretext of that they are carrying a genuine business. So they are not duping only to phishing victims, but to the government also, because government have a policy of ease of doing business. You can set up and do business. Normally police and any other law enforcement agency don't come and ask while doing business that what kind of business you are doing, what's your business process, who are your clients. No, that is not the thing. So when someone comes and reports that, okay, I have been duped, I have been cheated, then I go into it and find that, okay, this call has been originated from the XZY place, and we need a sufficient evidence that, okay, this call has originated from this, because they go on changing the numbers, and they also go on changing the people. So, and the person who has given the OTP, or maybe the victim OTP or the details, he also is not quite sure whether because willingly or unwillingly while talking he gives. So all that has to be put in proper legal formats and then investigate. Take a latest example. Now most of the banks are complaining us that you go to Google and you find out a place. Suppose this place, St. Regis. Then there is one edit available. You can edit the number of Regis. You go and you can now only you can do it on your mobile. So that call will come. Someone calls to St. Regis, will come to you. And people are giving the bank details. Suppose Bank of Baroda XYZ branch. The people, these criminals are giving their numbers there to that branch name. So people are calling them and asking and giving details. So this is psychological operation. And I don't, till so far in investigation, I have not found that part that it is connivance of politicians, police and press. No, I have not found it. But I will be happy to find out if it is there.
Mr. Tulijapurkar, I think you just wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, I just want to add what Dr. Rajput said, and I think we must realize, and he briefly touched upon it earlier, in terms of building capacities to understand the cyberspace and therefore the enforcement and the kind of prosecution as well as the legal aspects of it. But the alacrity and speed with which the law enforcement agencies in India are today taking cognizance of these offenses needs a round of applause to Dr. Rajput and everybody from the law enforcement agencies. I think we have experienced, and as a lawyer I can say this with conviction, that the alacrity and the speed with which the investigations have been conducted is phenomenal. The second aspect is that today we all know the limitations of the legislative, the enactments and the laws. Now, notwithstanding those limitations, I think the law enforcement agencies are actually trying to help each one of us. And I can with conviction say this, that when we were trying to create infringing website list, IWL, I think actually when we realized that more than an aggressive interpretation, I think it was the experience from the law enforcement agencies that helped us in creating something which even as a traditional lawyers we were apprehensive of whether a particular complaint in a particular form and manner will fit into the CRPC kind of boundaries. I think that was something where even at the boundary level, I think the law enforcement agencies are trying to do it in favor of the consumers.
Can I just add one aspect,
Yeah,
which is
sure.
psychological? I think as a culture, Indians have not been ever taught to self-protect. We are very shy to say no. We feel that we are going to be offending a caller when he asks for details and we don't give it. I think emotionally we have to self-preserve. And what Mr. Suhas, the lawyer, said very correctly when he was talking was that privacy is at the end of the day dependent on us. How much I put there makes me vulnerable to what can be done with what I put. So I think we have to be much more emotionally ready to be self-protected, to be self-preserving, and have the courage to say no.
I'm Revati Krishna from Hindustan Times.
Okay.
Saket, if you could just expand more on how safe are the saved card details that we have on different websites where we shop, like probably Amazon, Flipkart, Paytm. And one question for Anurag, sir, which you can address later, is in your insurance plan, how do you plan on quantify something like cyberbullying? Because how do you plan to put a number to that?
First of all of these websites are allowed to store your details, but they do not store your CVV details. So, as per the Indian law, if you're an Indian company trying to do a transaction using a credit card number, you require the CVV details and the second factor authentication also. So it's fairly secured from that perspective, but on the other side, I would only, the way I use it is I would only give my primary credit card to only websites which I can trust or which are large enough. So Amazon or Flipkart or these are Paytm, they have some very, very good security practices, and they actually invest in the tunes of tens of crores of rupees to make sure that the systems are really secured. But if there's a website which is new and I do not know about, but I still want to buy things from there, I would then go to the net safe banking or have a wallet transaction done, because the wallet has a lower limit. And another thing I can add is a lot of time I see people see it almost like a status symbol to have a larger limit credit card, and they keep giving those credit card details to everybody. So if you want to have a 10 lakh rupee credit card limit, the better thing to do is you have a 2 lakh rupee credit card and 5 of them, and that's far more secured than having one credit card with a 10 lakh rupee limit. I remember this case in the IIT Delhi, unfortunately, a very, very old professor who had a very big credit card limit, and I mean, of course, a professor means, not a very high salary, but a huge amount of money was withdrawn from there, and he really couldn't do anything. Even the bank couldn't do anything because he didn't know about it till like 40 days of the transaction happening, because SMS went to some other place, etc., etc.
As you rightly said, putting a number to what loss have I suffered because of cyberbullying or loss of my e-reputation or trolling is very, very difficult. So what we cover as an insurance company is the direct financial loss and not the perceived or assumed loss to somebody's reputation. So what we say is that if you suffered these cyber offenses, then what we pay is the cost of hiring an IT expert to go and delete and clean up your social media wall. We pay you the cost of the consultation with a psychologist if this has caused you trauma or stress. and we pay you the cost to defend yourself or to initiate legal expense against the offender. These are direct, quantifiable financial expenses, and that we pay.
Okay, so I'd just like to request Shefali now to come on stage for a vote of thanks. And again, a huge, huge round of applause for all of these ladies and gentlemen for giving us such valuable insights on what is a very, very important topic. So thank you very much. Shefali?
I would say it was really a very interesting and a very insightful afternoon on the cybercrime. And on behalf of HDFC ERGO, I would like to thank all the respected panelists for being a part of this press meet and supporting us on the Cyber Security Awareness Week. Thank you so much. Starting with Dr. Rajput, Ms. Chulani, Mr. Tulijapurkar, Mr. Modi, and Mr. Anurag Rastogi. I would also like to thank Nikhil Inamdar for anchoring this entire show. I would like to thank all the media fraternity present here today for being a part of this press meet, and we look forward for your support in this drive of spreading cybercrime awareness. And I would like to thank my colleagues from HDFC ERGO, starting with Surbhi Goyal, Vaishali Vora, Trishna Patni, and the entire RLMU team, Vishal, Jitendra, Amit. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for your support. The procurement team, and a very special thank you to my marketing team, Reggie, Lena, Christina, Rebecca, who is not here, but thank you so much. And thank you all the audience once again. Thank you so much.